and what follows afterwards. Attention, however, this evening is turned to Ondo State. In 7 days, it will be a month in office for the Ondo State Governor, Aiyedatiwa, since the demise of former Governor OluwaRotimiAkeredolu. Governor Aiyedatiwa is yet to have a deputy. The question tonight is what is the political intrigues going on in that state on who becomes the next deputy governor? And I have joining me lawyer Femi Mudamora and public affairs analyst Wilson Ikubese. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program. There are concerns in some quarters that more than 3 weeks after the governor's swearing in, that he's yet to appoint his deputy. They say that none of the former governors who took over after the death of or impeachment of the principals took as long as this to appoint their deputies. And reference has now been made to instances when former Kaduna State Governor Mukta Yero appointed as deputy in December of 2012 after taking over power less than 2 weeks earlier. There is Ibrahim Gaidam, former governor of Yobe State, appointed as deputy 2 days after assuming office as governor of the state in 2009. And in the case of former President Goodluck Jonathan, he appointed as vice a week after he was sworn in 2010. What do you think the situation in Ondo State is right now? Why do you think it's quite different? Let me begin with Mr. Ikubese.
All right. Thanks for having me once again. To begin with, the Constitution in Section 193 clearly stipulates that the governor is at liberty to choose his deputy. That's in terms of assigning responsibility for the deputy. It's meant to be a joint ticket by way of election, but in special situations like this, where there's a demise of the governor and the deputy takes over, and you expect the now incumbent governor to appoint a deputy for himself, well, there is no time limit, as it were, specifically about when he should appoint a deputy governor. So that takes us to the role of the deputy governor. Unfortunately, if you look at that section, the way the role of the deputy governor was described was alongside that of the commissioner. So, in other words, even if there is no deputy governor, as it were, Mr. Governor can always designate a commissioner to play the role of a deputy governor, because there is no constitutional role assigned to a deputy governor in Nigeria, which is quite unfortunate. And that's why I've always advocated that we should have constitutional role for the deputy governor. So, but for the sake of political expediency, one would say, okay, Mr. Governor has been sworn into office. Now he has the powers, and 3 weeks is gone. There should be a deputy governor for him. That becomes a matter of the Constitution, which we expect that the deputy governor should be there to assist the governor. But the time frame is not specified, and even the function is not specified. We've always said it's an office of air tire. So I wouldn't say that we are really missing the office of the deputy governor, because whatever the deputy governor does depends on what the governor asks him to do. But again, I know that Mr. Governor might also be having a second thought. Some people have said he wants to run for governorship in the next election. He has not declared his intention. If this is true, that means that he will put so many factors into consideration. What are the factors that will work in his favor if and when he decides to run for the office of the governor eventually? The late governor was from Owo, and that is Ondo North. So some people are expecting that the next deputy governor should also come from the north, because the incumbent governor is from the south. So these are all calculations, and I want to believe Mr. Governor is putting all the cards on the table to see which of them will work most in the favor of the state generally, and maybe for his ambition if he decides to run eventually.
Let me bring Mr. Mudamora into this conversation. We hear the governor has been under pressure to name his deputy, but he's just 26 days old in office. Is there any law that compels him to do this within a particular time frame?
Let me say that Dr. Wilson is right by saying that the Constitution does not specifically or expressly provide the time limit within which the governor ought to appoint the deputy. But I think the reason is that the Constitution does not even say that the vacuum should be left unduly long. There shouldn't be vacuum in the first place. I think that is the reason why the Constitution would not even expressly say this is the time limit. And let me explain why I think it is so. Section 186 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999, as amended, provides expressly that there shall be, for each state of the Federation, a deputy governor. There shall is a mandatory provision, not there may, there shall. So a deputy governor must be for each state of the Federation. And if you proceed to Section 187, subsection 1 of the same Constitution, you find there that no one could even be deemed to have been validly nominated by his own political party for the office of the governor of his state unless he, in turn, nominates another person as his associate. And so upon his election as the governor, the associate so appointed automatically becomes the deputy governor. So if you cannot even contest, if you cannot be duly nominated for the office of a governor unless and until you nominate another person, then we need to understand that it cannot be at the pleasure. Unfortunately, I disagree with the doctor on that. It cannot be at the pleasure of the governor. There shall be, means there shall not be a vacuum. So if we are saying that Section 193, subsection 2, paragraph B and C of the Constitution does not expressly provide the time limit within which the deputy governor, upon becoming a governor, needs to appoint another person to replace him as the deputy governor. We also need to understand, if we want to balance that argument, that Section 193, subsection 1, which provides that the deputy governors are assumed the office of the governor upon the death or resignation, impeachment, or permanent incapacity of the governor, also does not stipulate the time factor, the time limit. So, assuming, let's ask the hypothetical question. The Honorable Chief Judge of Ondo State has refused to swear His Excellency, Governor Aiyedatiwa, immediately upon the death of the former governor, and has refused to do so for the first day, the second day, the first week, the second week, the third week. Would those who are saying there is no time limit bring up the same argument that yes, the Honorable Chief Judge could refuse to swear him in because there is no time limit? And if you also extend that argument further, you are saying that it means he could even wait till maybe February 23rd or December 31st for as long as he pleases before appointing. I do not think that is the intention of the Constitution, because in the interpretation of statutes and the Constitution in particular, what is paramount is for you to determine the intention of the legislation, the intention of the lawmakers in enacting the statute. So, if Section 186 already provides that there shall be, then the Constitution does not expect a vacuum. And when they say, look, the governor upon assuming the functions or office of the governor, or the deputy governor upon assuming the office of the governor following the death or impeachment of the governor, shall nominate. Shall, again, is a word that is, that indicates, a compulsion.
All right.
It's obligatory for him to do so. So it is not at pleasure. If it is at his pleasure, then the Constitution would have used the word may. And what we are saying now is this, in all fairness to him, he has had enough time to consult. And I said, never in the history of our constitutional democracy in Nigeria have we waited for such a long period of time before, anybody or anyone who has assumed the office of a governor or president in the past upon the death of the governor or president, as the case may be, waited that long.
All right.
You quoted the of Yobe. Well, you talk about Cardinal Governor Yero. The truth is that even in Yobe, Gedam assumed the office of the governor on January 27, year 2010. January 27, year 2009. And then, less than 2 days after that, he appointed deputy, a new deputy. He had political ambition too. Goodluck Jonathan assumed the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on May 6, year 2010. He appointed a deputy or a vice president for the whole of the Federation of Nigeria just 8 days after. By May 14, he had already appointed one. He had political ambition too. And then you talk about Governor Yero. He became governor on December 16. By December 28, we already had a deputy in Ondo State here, for instance. A deputy governor was impeached, quote unquote, illegally, you must admit, because the court eventually declared that to be legal. And I'm talking of Aleo Lanusi was impeached. And then in less than 24 hours, you had him replaced with Alhaji Lasisi Oluboyo. Go to Bayelsa again. Goodluck Jonathan became the governor of Bayelsa State upon the impeachment of Alamisia. In less than a few days, less than a week, I think about 3 or 4 days, you already appointed a new deputy. So we cannot wait because of the political ambition of any individual, and then the whole state should be waiting.
I hear you, Mr. Emodamori. Let me get back to Dr. Wilson. You had the lawyer, trying to prove that what is happening in Ondo is considered unprecedented. But what do you make of the school of thought that this delay raises serious questions about the governor's commitment to uphold the constitutional principles that govern the country's democratic system?
All right, thank you very much. First, let me say that my learned brother took me out of context. When I said that the position of the deputy governor is at the grace of the governor, I was making reference to the functionality. There are two things. You have the functionality and you have the occupation. The occupation of the office of the deputy governor is not at the instance, it's not at the grace of the governor. That is a constitutional matter. Even though we do not have a timeline as to when Mr. Governor should appoint a deputy, we expect that all things being equal, there should be no vacuum. Mr. Governor should appoint a deputy as fast as possible, within the ambit of his jurisprudence. But what I was saying, that is at the instance and the grace of Mr. Governor, is the functionality of the office. All right? Because Section 193 that I mentioned talks about the fact that the office of the deputy governor can function only to the effect that Mr. Governor gives that office power to function. And that's why I say it's unfortunate. And that's one thing that we really should address. And I don't know why we've been shying away from that for so long a time. Because a governor can have a deputy in office and choose to render the deputy non-functional because there is no role assigned to the office of the deputy governor. So when I say that it's at the grace of the governor,
we may have lost connection with Dr. Wilson. We'll get back to him in the course of the show. But Mr. Emodat, I'd like to get your opinion on this because I heard your legal thoughts, but are you also considering the political realities in Ondo? There are talks, for instance, about how the elders of the APC have specifically asked Mr. Governor to stay action until the burial of his predecessor. They say it will be disrespectful to be shopping for a deputy while his remains are yet to be buried. Don't you consider that a genuine concern?
The factors I was making allusion to, that so many things are going on the ground. As a matter of fact, when Mr. Governor appointed some key officers, like the chief press secretary, photographer, and the rest of them, some people still said it was disrespectful. I should have waited until after the burial of Mr. Governor. So in situations like this, so many things come into place. But the bottom line is there should be no vacuum in government. But beyond that, my pain is that even if Mr. Governor appoints a deputy governor today, so before we even get there, the first question is, are we missing the deputy governor? The answer is no. Because what is the role of the deputy governor? The answer is none. All right, so but for political expediency and for filling of the constitutional requirement, of course, we expect that Mr. Governor should appoint
Dr. Wilson.
So the question,
I'm sure you made.
I'm before the burial or after the burial.
If you can hear me, Dr. Wilson.
These are factors that are also into consideration.
I'm sure you mentioned earlier about the political interests in, appointing a deputy governor. Some have talked about, which senatorial district of the state should provide the next deputy governor. Some have even specifically asked that it should be someone from Owo to allow, that part of the state conclude its tenure after the demise of the former governor. So, I understand the constitutional role you're talking about, but there's also, the political dimension to this development. Very quickly, Mr. Emo Damori, I was asking you earlier about, what the APC elders reportedly have told the governor to hold on deciding who his deputy governor will be in honor of the former governor just after his burial. Do you consider that a genuine reason for this delay?
No, I do not consider the purported advice or admonition of the APC elders genuine, and it will not be appropriate for them to advise the governor in such a way that it will ridicule the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If you are saying it's disrespectful to appoint a deputy governor, soon after the demise of His Excellency Governor OluwaRotimiAkeredolu, for instance, then you probably will agree then. And why didn't you tell him that it was disrespectful for him to be sworn just a few hours after the demise of the same governor? No, there should not be a vacuum. There is no sentiment about this. I'm speaking to you. I am one of the greatest, admirers and supporters of the late governor, and I appeared on radio and TV stations where I said until the man breathed his last breath, I will stay, I will support him with the whole of my energy, because I consider him someone who was very progressive-minded, a lot of, architectural base for the social engineering of the state. So he had his own weakness, like I always say. So in spite of my total support for the late governor, I'm totally in agreement, with His Excellency Aiyedatiwa assuming office just a few hours of his death. That was not disrespectful to him. The law is the law. There's no sentiment. So, but having assumed the office of the governor, now why should we now turn around to say, look, appointing a deputy governor to fill the vacuum created by your ascension to the office of the governor is disrespectful? I'm afraid, I want to believe the governor is a man of capacity, and so he should disregard any advice by some of these so-called APC party leaders. I'm sorry to use that language. I'm saying this because the danger is that the more the delay, the more the pressure, and the more the pressure, the more the ability or the tendency of some people to cash in on this, to constitute themselves into some lobbyist group, and they start extorting. Is a reality that we must agree. There are some rumors to that, but I don't want to, be the one to start saying that on air. The more the delay, the more the number of people lobbying, and the more the number of people lobbying, the more the tendency for something to start happening in the process of lobbying. I believe Aiyedatiwa is a man of capacity. If he agreed to be sworn in a few hours after the demise of Akeredolu, then it will be hypocritical of him to not turn around to say, well, I'm only following the advice of APC not to appoint a deputy governor because it will be disrespectful. Was it disrespectful for you to assume office a few hours after the death of Akeredolu? I don't think so. Well,
it doesn't also look like a very simple decision for the governor to make when you consider the multiplicity of interests involved. Some have asked that the deputy governor should come from Ondo North. Others are saying it should be Ondo Central. Some have even mentioned categorically that the governor should wait till the expiration of this tenure, before picking a running mate if he's intending to run. But Dr. Wilson, the governor has also been accused of by some of running a one-man show, in the governors of the state, and that he was taking his time to announce a loyalist as deputy. You don't appoint a non-loyalist as deputy, do you?
Well, in appointing a deputy should be somebody that you will be able to work with, will be someone that understands your vision, that understands your body language, someone that shares similar opinion with you, someone that belongs to your school of thought. Otherwise you are going to have a conflict, and that conflict will snowball into making a mess. So many factors come into play here. So I do agree that whoever Mr. Governor is going to appoint should be someone that he thinks he will be able to work with. we have a very short period of time before this tenure comes to an end. But within that period of time, if he appoints someone that he will not be able to work with, it will just lead to catastrophe, like we have seen in many states where you have a conflict between the governor and the deputy. So for me, these are factors that one should take into consideration. If you ask me, should Mr. Governor appoint a deputy soon? I'll tell you yes. I agree totally with the barrister. I 100% agree with him that there should be no vacuum in governance. But, you know, at that level, so many factors begin to come into play. This is a governor who, as a deputy, was at the pitch of being impeached, you know, and then he came back because so many factors came into play. So many people, you know, sat down, many phone calls here and there, many meetings here and there, and today he found himself in the office of the governor. So I think he wants to listen to some of the voices that probably got him back into office, that probably stopped his impeachment as a deputy governor then before he became a governor. So there are so many factors here. But like Mr. Barrister said, there should be no vacuum in governance. Mr. Governor should appoint a deputy as soon as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, great angle you're exploring, considering how turbulent the journey was for him, you know, before he emerged governor. But he has less than 1 year to be governor. Mr. Aiyedatiwa, we have just less than a minute on the show. The off-cycle election is scheduled for November, and some say the politicking for some, you know, has commenced in earnest. How much impact will this have on governance in the state? Because the last time I heard from the chief press secretary, he says the governor is actually, you know, focused on the business of governance, and that's perhaps he's taking his time with the appointment of a deputy.
No, the appointment of a deputy is also part of the constitutional responsibility of a governor in these circumstances, and that is provided for, like you said, in Section 193, it's also Section 3 of the Constitution. So it's part of his first and immediate responsibility. I must admit that it may be a tough decision for His Excellency, because, like you said, you have election around the corner. Where to choose the deputy from may be a little bit challenging. Of course, that may not, the deputy should not and cannot come from Ondo South, but between Ondo North and Ondo Central, that would be a very difficult challenge. We have to admit, it's a challenge for him. Why am I saying this? The late governor was from Ondo North, so if you should pick somebody from Ondo Central, now they will say, oh, so you couldn't even compensate us over the demise of our son. You know, the mentality of the people, sentiment, by bringing another person from Ondo North. And Ondo Central will be looking at it like, look, you are from Ondo South now, you need to pick a deputy.
Well, I'm afraid that's our time. You know, we both agree, all of us agree that it's not going to be a simple, very simple decision for the governor to make, considering the political intrigues involved. But he has to make a decision, and we're following up closely to see how soon he makes that decision. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Femi Amodamori is a legal practitioner, and Dr. Wilson Ekubese is a public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on the program this evening. Well, you can watch it all over again at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. See you again soon.